Hi, what a lovely introduction. Thank you, friend. Just one edit. We are now at $8 million generated for Black women entrepreneurs, and that is getting towards our $1 billion goal for the Black community. So, yes, thank you for the introduction. I'm in my Kendrick Canadian tuxedo, channeling all the vibes. I'm excited to be here and to be talking to you as always.
Oh, I'm excited and honored, and also 8 million. That is fantastic. So, in our last talk, we were just talking about generational wealth, legacy, which I know is something that is so near and dear to your heart, but also the mission behind it. So, I'm excited to talk about not just your insights and expertise, but a lot of individuals in the room today are also really figuring out what is my personal brand? How do I position this? And what if I'm not an entrepreneur? What if I'm trying to get a job? Whatever that might be. So I know, take notes to everyone who's listening in. And I want to kick off with Jay. You often talk about how storytelling is the core of branding and business growth. So tell those of us who might not know, why is storytelling so critical to building not just a brand, but a sustainable brand?
Yes. I'm a brand person. I'm a brand girly, as you heard. And I don't only think that you should have a brand if you're an entrepreneur. I think you are a brand. In 2025, if you're living, breathing, walking, eating, and you have an Instagram or any type of social media, LinkedIn, whatever, as our last guest was just talking about, people are looking at you with a certain lens. And the most basic definition of branding is the perception that you want someone to have about you. So we actually study psychology when you are becoming a marketer like myself. You have to understand how people think, how people react, and you have to kind of anticipate their thoughts so that you can come in there and shape them as you want. So no matter what you're branding yourself for, like, whether that's personal, whether that's entrepreneurship, whether that's in the career and workspace, it's how are you showing up and what do people think about you? And it's not just, what they see. You should be kind of crafting a story around the key pieces. So just like you would do a resume, right? Or you would craft or curate your IG, like you're showing bits and pieces that are highlights, that are, attractive to clients, consumers, and, recruiting or moving up in the company. The story bit though comes in, unlike a resume or, your highlight reels, there's also vulnerability. There's also authenticity. That is where people will relate to you because people buy from people, people follow people. If you've ever quit a job and the head of whoever moves somewhere and you follow her, it's not necessarily because of the job, it's because you're following that person. People follow leaders. That's just how we are as humans. People follow brands. Um, people follow creative hobbies. There's all kinds of things. So why is it that someone should follow you, whether that's in the workspace, on IG, or buying your products and services? What story do you have that can really resonate with your audience, whoever that audience may be?
Yes, I love it. And I think something that's so important, just as I'm thinking about what you were talking about in regards to storytelling, aligning that with a resume or a CV, also understanding that that story evolves and changes over time.
Yeah.
Whereas the bullet points that you might have put in 2018 won't be the same in 2023. And so, Jay,
Yeah.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we know this, but I'd love to hear a little bit from you as well. I'm going off the mark a little bit, but when you think about individuals who are trying to tell that story over time, what are some of the tips that you have for how to really bridge the gap with different parts of their stories, no matter where they're at?
Yes. Good question. Because my mind, I'm coming out of work mode into this chat. And as you mentioned, the Hustle Leads Brand Bootcamp is our signature accelerator program, and we are running ads. And right now we have an ad that has just gone crazy, millions of views and impressions. And it's because I'm talking about storytelling and content in a non-traditional way. I thought it was, basic information, but apparently it's gold. So I'll share that with you here as well. And if you go on my Instagram, you'll see it as the a pinned reel. I'm wearing like a tan sweater. But essentially what I'm saying is like drop people in the middle of your story. Like we don't need to hear, I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1989, like a chronological, then I worked this job, then I did this. It's very boring very quickly. So can you drop us in the middle of the story? 2017, I quit and left America. And it's just like, wait, what? Or whatever that may be for you. You know, I talked to someone on a call today. She was like, I've been in humanitarian work and government assistance, and I decided to follow my dream and my passion. And now I'm working with the NBA because I grew up playing basketball here in Senegal. Like, boom, so exciting, great story. I want to know more. Versus, okay, I started my career here, or I did this thing and right? It's like drop them in the middle, get them interested in following along, and find ways to engage that may be unexpected and not like the linear way to tell a story or to talk to someone. And I think that for most of us, whether we're entrepreneurs, whether we're creating content for social or trying to brand ourselves in the workspace or personally, that's going to get people to at least want to stay around and listen, because attention spans like this. So if you can't keep us, we go.
Love it. Listen, I love it. I'm like, I want to know more about her story. I was like, and also I loved how you tied it back where you dropped us in the middle, or she dropped us in the middle, and then tied it back to when I was younger. And it really brings folks full circle, because I think that's so important. If it's not just what it is that we're saying, but it's also how we're saying it. And I want to pause because I know that I'm sure that there's so many people who are listening right now who some of the things that Jakiya is saying might be sparking questions. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I will bring it here as well so that we can be able to hear and answer your questions real time. But as we do, I mean, Jay, as we were talking about it, I know that you center legacy in so much of your work, and even just thinking about, no, it's not $2 million that we've created in revenue, it's 8 million. Like that's a huge jump. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what legacy means to you and why does it matter? I mean, especially during Black History Month, and especially at the
I know, I was like, which answer do you want? Oh, legacy is everything. I think, I mean, the reason why I'm here is ancestors and legacy, right? And like, if they didn't do the things that they did, if they didn't fight the way that they fought, especially being Black American from the South, right? Like, I wouldn't be here. So for me, it's a no-brainer. It's like ingrained. I feel like I have to leave a mark. I have to make an impact. And it doesn't mean through your child, like if you don't have children, that's fine. If you do, that's fine too. But it doesn't always have to be this, oh, my kids and my grandkids. It's like, for me, legacy is all of the people that you touch in your world, right? And like how, and Maya Angelou said it the best, and my grandma quotes her all the time, which is, people will forget what you said, but they will remember how you feel, right? And I know I just got chills channeling Maya. So it's like, I want to leave a legacy. Yes, of course, creating impact and income, but also remembering me as a person and my brand and what I'm doing, of how I made people feel empowered, motivated, inspired, like proof that it's possible. I grew up as a child of a single mom that had 2 kids under 2, living in low income housing. Like, if I can do it, you can too. And like, to me, that's all part of the fabric of legacy. Even if I don't have a dime at the end of all of this, I think generational wealth is also education. I'm the first in my family to go to college, right? Knowledge. We're able to do more, move in different ways, and we can pass that down in legacy as well. Entrepreneurship, you know, teaching people around me, you don't have to do corporate if you don't want to. I never heard that narrative really. Like maybe my great grandparents were on that vibe and then things shifted a bit. So I think legacy to me is just, it's just everything. We eat, live, and breathe it. And I think the way that you move and show up in this world will determine your legacy. Yes. Question for the chat.
And also thinking about, again, tying that legacy, I was like, you said, even if I don't end up with a dime, I'm like, yeah, but that legacy is creating $8 million of collective revenue and supporting.
That we can track so far, yeah.
Right? I was like, ask her in 6 months, we'll see what happens. But it's amazing, just because I think, again, like the legacy, the storytelling, it all really comes back to who we are as individuals as well. And I know that we have a question from the chat, but I really want to dive into this because I think owning our experience, our legacy, where we came from, our stories, our skills, it all comes back to the conversation that always talks about authenticity. So be authentic, be you.
Buzzword.
Exactly, where it's such a buzzword and it's not always easy to achieve because how am I showing up in different spaces? What does that actually mean? Do I have psychological safety? Like, do you deserve to know my true self? So I'd love to hear, listen,
Yeah.
I love to hear from your perspective, right? Because I think, again, authenticity has become such a buzzword, but how can people really own their story through a sense of pride, but then also through a sense of impact, especially when they're trying to appeal to
Yeah.
a broad audience, if that's even the right strategy, right? Tell us about it.
Yeah, and I think this can also kind of answer the question from the chat of how you would adapt your story approach for different audiences. A similar question. Being authentic, how are you showing up in different spaces? So long answer, short, I would say I have this thing that I call the 10% rule, which is, you are 100% of a person, right? But only the 10% that is relevant to that audience, that room, that, engagement opportunity is where you need to focus. So you can show 10% of yourself, and that 10% of yourself can be 100% authentic, if that makes sense. So it doesn't need to be your whole life and your whole story and how you kiki with your homegirls or whatever. You can still show up as who you are, but it is relevant to the space, to the audience that you're in. Not saying you have to code switch and do all that, but it's like, I need to stick to the script and make sure that I'm tailoring that script, that story to the listeners in that space. So social media, you have to think about, again, I talked about psychology. You have to think about how people are getting on these apps and consuming. They're not getting on here like it's a teachable or some kind of course and being like, I want to learn about la la la. It's not, and also social medias are not created equal. So we have Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. People are getting on with different lenses. So you have to think about how your story is going to be perceived on an app where everyone's dancing and kikiing and laughing and having a great time, like TikTok, right? Or long form like YouTube or Instagram, where it's really, curated and whatever, or Threads where it's like people just talking their talk and whatever. So one, understanding your audience, period. That's platforms, that's in person, that's digital, that's authenticity. All of those kind of things go together. It's like, who am I in front of? And then what part of me am I showing and diving deep into? Because you're not going to give all your cards away. You don't have to. But it's like, get them, again, in storytelling, intrigued enough to take the next action. So for you, it may be hiring. For someone else, it may be buying your products, or someone else, it may be coming to your event. Don't give that 100% all away. It's like, if you went on the first date, I know y'all are not on a first date showing somebody 100%. This is me. What you see is what you get. I highly doubt there's some kind of curation on date one. So it's the same thing with storytelling. And it's not a lie. It's just you're unveiling certain parts of the story when it becomes relevant to the time, just like dating.
I love this. I love a good dating analogy. And I also think, listen, I'm like, it's true because I think you bring up such a good point, especially when you were talking about know your audience. I'm going to share a quick story that's relevant, right?
Yes, we love stories.
I know, right? But the same way that Jakiya is talking about knowing your audience, who are you speaking to, on what platform, it's so relevant for the personal brand, which you talked about before, is how others perceive you. For me personally, 2 years ago, I was struggling getting buy-in from someone who focused in finance. Now, I can give you a deck, I can give you a story, I can give you emotion. At that time, I could not
want numbers.
Numbers, an Excel sheet, and like the data. It doesn't have to be pretty, but I just want to see what it was. And it was such a barrier for me because it took me time to know my audience until I learned, okay, doesn't have to be pretty, needs to be the numbers, need to show the sources. And once I learned how to share and create that story for that audience, buy-in got so much easier. So I think the example that you're talking about is so relevant no matter what you're adapting it to, but I think it really has to do with knowing your audience and then speaking to them. And I love what you were saying about the 10%. You don't need to give everything in all spaces, but adapting
Yes.
what that is.
I want to add to this the legacy bit that just came to my mind as well, because to me, it's the fabric of everything. So knowing your audience, but also knowing your core values, and something that you talk about a lot of the times is your non-negotiable or your intrinsic values, which is like, legacy is also what you do and won't stand for. So if you're going in these rooms and adapting to every single person just because that's what you think they want, it's kind of like your core and who you are and what you represent is lost. So being very clear before you even start telling your story, what is my story? Who am I to me? Tell your story to yourself first, and then you're able to market yourself outward. So I think the reason why marketing comes to me so easily, obviously I'm trained corporately and in school, but the part that is you can't learn is because I'm comfortable with my own story. And so if you don't like it, I don't care, because it's my story and I'm comfortable with it, and I'm confident that the people who will align and connect and identify are the right people, because I'm so sure on those core values. If I was flaking on my core values and trying to be someone I wasn't, I would attract the wrong people, which then just puts you down this rabbit hole. But when you attract the right people, they help you grow the legacy. We're increasing the dollars. Where, like, I just met a girl the other day from an ad who got on a call with me, and she has like 200 something acres of farmland in Kansas City. And like, that's legacy. It's like, now I'm connected to someone who has this beautiful story that's a Black owned farmland, and all my ideas are coming up. And it's like, those are the things you want to remember about people. And so just making sure that you stand 10 toes down on that, even when people challenge you.
I love that. And I mean, I just want to give all of you that are listening right now a call to action is, after this call, after the summit today, take time to write down what is my story, and start feeling comfortable. Like what Jay was saying is like, not just knowing your story, but owning your story and feeling proud about that, no matter what room and no matter what space you're in. Because again, when you have and know and value your story, not in the titles or the resume, or like what Jakiya says, your e-statement, right? Like, here are all the great things that I've done in life, but like, what is your story? And then how do you make sure that your story and your values show up? Going to that conversation around authenticity of, you know who you are, no matter what table you're sitting at or what room you're in.
That's right. And pieces of those stories, can be the moments that make you proud, but why, right? It's like, I talk about quitting my job. I talk about working in corporate, but there's a story behind all of those things that I'm proud of, right? I talk about first generation, and I list all these companies. Why? Because you don't see people like me in those spaces at those tables. So yes, I'm going to put that as part of my story, and a receipt, if you could do both. That's double points. But yeah, it's kind of yes, good questions. That's good. Okay, should I go to the next question?
No, ma'am, I'm facilitating.
Oh, great. I love them. Sorry, I'm like getting excited.
No, I love it. This is how we know
I like that people are interested in branding and storytelling. It makes me happy.
Exactly. And like, I also think, again, so many of the folks who are listening now, or whether they're listening to the recording, they almost always share notes. They're hyping up in the chat that we can't see here, but I'm sure that is snapping. So I love it. Let's dive in. A question that we got is, how do you balance vulnerability and professionalism in storytelling? Tell us a little bit about that. And maybe this goes to the 10% rule that you were talking about before, right? But I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the question is layered, I think, because for me, I own my own business and I'm the boss. So like, I push the boundaries of what we deem as professionalism, because I'm like, my name is on the door. So at the end of the day, right? But like, when you're working for someone or you're trying to get a job from someone else, that's why I really do preach like having your own and ownership, even if it's not full time or your only gig. But like, where no one can fire you, or no one can, you know, tell you that you can't wear this or you can't act like this. So that's the caveat I'll just put behind where I'm coming, because reminder, I left corporate America in the end of 2016. So it's been almost 8 years. And so my idea of like professionalism has changed outside of the corporate space. So I'll just give you that context. I think again, 10%, like read the room first, read the room. Is it a safe space to even be vulnerable? Because everywhere is not a place for vulnerability, unfortunately, especially for people who look like us. We do have to show up the utmost professional. And some of that vulnerability does have to be packed away for another place, space, and time. So I would just say read the room, understand the space, and then again, craft your story. So when I talk about my mom, who I'm very proud of, or when I talk about certain elements of my story, it is vulnerable, but I've crafted my story so well that it's like, I'm not like breaking down crying. And if you do, you know, I think that's fine. But you know what I'm saying? Like I'm crafting it so it still feels professional, but it still allows people to say, oh, okay, I didn't know that about her. That's so interesting. And then they can lean in a little bit more. So I guess my answer is practice. Like, I know that sounds kind of fake, but in the world we live in today and where we're trying to get, really crafting our brand and how we show up and practicing how we do that will get us further. And then you'll start to kind of be able to move through your story a lot easier. And then, like you said, Sienna, like how you say it, the words you say, you'll be able to choose that wisely depending on the rooms that you're in. But yeah, I know that's another keyword, like vulnerability, authenticity, transparency. I get it.
You bring up a lot of really good points, and I just want to double tap on what you said of making sure that there is safety and psychological safety for that vulnerability. Because again, the way that I might have an hour-long conversation with Jakiya might not be the same conversation that I would have with X, Y, or Z person. But going back to what Jay was saying in regards to your values and your non-negotiables, being able to have a little bit of that sentiment of awareness of when
Yes.
and where is the time for
Awareness.
certain
Yes,
spaces,
yes,
right?
that's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for, yes.
And like, I would just have, like, I'm gonna dive in really quickly from like the corporate end. Let's say that you might be in an organization and you're trying to figure out the vulnerability versus professionalism as well. Also understand what both of those things mean to you. How are you defining
Good.
professionalism? For example, I'm an extremely professional person, yet I'm still gonna have my team do deep breathing exercises when we start a call because
Yes.
it's one of my core values, you know? So it's like understanding and defining what both of those things mean for you. And then if we're talking about storytelling, why is deep breathing a core value of mine? Because X,
Mhm.
Y, Z. So it brings it
Comes
together.
back, yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I love it.
that's good, that's a good answer, it's a great
I was
answer.
like, I've been listening to you for years. I'm just trying. I'm trying.
And you know me, I'm gonna just show up how I show up, so it's like,
Exactly.
either y'all with it or y'all not. But I also have the luxury to do that because I've created a life that allows me to do that. And yes, have I been told that you're too aggressive, you're too black, you're too this, you talk like this? Of course, but I spent so much of my career, my life trying to fit into a box that I would never fit in. And for me, that was just uncomfortable. So this is my version of professionalism, as you said, and it is still professional. We got the collared shirt on, but doesn't have to be cookie cutter and in a box that people feel comfortable. Because the other thing for me is vulnerability and not necessarily vulnerability, but challenging, right? Like if I'm doing my job correctly, I'm challenging the people that are on the other side of the table, not making them feel comfortable. Because I'm in spaces with these teams, right? I'm leading these marketing campaigns, and I have to tell them, we can't say that. We can't do that. That's borderline appropriation or whatever it is, right? And so I have to be confident in challenging those people as well.
Yeah, and I mean something that could just came up when you were saying that though, but also like our existence and our stories are often challenging societal norms and what
Period.
right? And like, and what we think we should be or how we should show up. So I'm joking because like, even you were like, I'm wearing a collared shirt, and I'm like, you built $8 million of collective revenue. Like, it doesn't matter if Jay shows up in a collared shirt or a sweatshirt, because I think, again, we have these societal ideas of
Yeah.
professionalism needs to look like.
Yes.
That, again, we go back to diluting ourselves or changing who we are versus like what Jakiya was saying before, really knowing and owning your story, but not just your story, your skills, your receipts, your expertise, where it doesn't matter I was like, I love the Canadian tux. Like it, but it doesn't matter if you're wearing a collar shirt or not, because you deserve to be in the room and you know what that worth is.
But I will add to
Yeah,
that
go ahead.
quickly, because we are playing by a set of rules. There is a systemic way to do things. And if we aren't sort of aligned in some kind of way with that, for people like us, it will automatically get us out of those rooms or not even invited at all. So I tiptoe on, and we're getting like a little bit deeper for Black History Month, but I tiptoe on that because it's like, there is a playbook, there is a rule book, and it's like, you have to know how to play the game and use those rules to your benefit, because something so small can disqualify you. I remember I got disinvited from a meeting at L'Oreal because I didn't have heels on. That's not only sexist, but so many other things. But that was written in the rules. Like, this is how we have to show up to these certain meetings, wear these certain things. When you're at Chanel, you have to wear Chanel. Like, they have it written in a lot of these rule books. And while we do our own thing, yes, you have to also learn how to navigate the system in a way that works for you. So it's like a double-edged sword.
10 out of 10. And also what's making me think of is, and I know that we have 1 minute left, but bringing that back to your legacy as well. So going back to what Jakiya kicked off with is, okay, understanding the rule books, knowing your audience, being able to create and craft and know and own your story, but then also tapping into what is the legacy that you want to leave. And so Jay, I know, I wish we could be here for an hour more, but I know we have a chat after this. Jakiya, where can folks reach out? How can they get connected for people who are like, Jakiya, I need to work with you on my storytelling, my brand, no matter what it is? Where can they reach out?
Yeah, so Jakiya Brown Thiaw, just like you see on here, everywhere. So LinkedIn, Instagram, all the things. You'll find me, you'll see me, and connect with me there. Shoot me a DM or a message, and we'll connect from there. We have our Hustle to Ease Brand Bootcamp. So if you are someone that is looking to build a brand to accelerate over the course of 6 weeks with a community of like-minded Black women who are professionals, entrepreneurs, building their own brands, have vision, but really just need to connect the dots and work with a strategist and a marketer who knows how to do so. Our brand bootcamp is always open for application. So we're actually accepting the next cohort right now, but we have cycles of cohorts throughout the year. So if you're looking for a quick but intense boost of business growth and business consulting and coaching with me, Hustle to Ease Brand Bootcamp, which Sienna has done with me basically several times at this point. You can tap in whenever you want, or just connect. Like, I'm happy to connect, provide expertise, insights, branding, activation, speaking, wherever you see the brand, you see the legacy, you see the mission of what I'm trying to do. If there's somewhere I can plug into you, your company, or your brand, I'm happy to do so.
And I am the loudest testimonial, just because, as you can all probably see in this conversation, Jakiya has so much insight and expertise. So thank you, Jay, for joining us. And all of you, feel free to connect and reach out to her as well. And so I'm excited because I'm going to pass it over to Meg for our next talk. Thank you so much, Jakiya.
Thank you. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.